My name's Amanda. I am a career consultant here in the CPDC. I work with undergrad engineering. My colleagues that are with me today are going to introduce themselves as well.
Hi all, I'm Lisa Dictor. I work in the Career Center working as a career consultant with the College of Engineering students.
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Frick and I work with the Tepper undergraduate students.
All right, and as we see some new faces coming in and more people joining, just a reminder that this is the CPDC's virtual career fair prep workshop. And today's workshop is intended for undergrad students here at CMU. Just to kind of give you an intro as to what we're going to cover during this time. Obviously, we're going to give you some ideas of what to expect with this virtual career fair coming up and other virtual events, how to register, what to do before and after, and preparing for these events, of course. And we're going to obviously allow questions as well. So today you can tell that we're using the Zoom webinar feature. This allows for a more streamlined presentation. So this includes that Q&A box. So this is where you're going to enter your questions that you have throughout the presentation. You're welcome to enter them at any time. We will try to get to them as we are covering that content or the related content that you have questions about. But we have also a lot of time at the end where we're going to cover any questions you might have as well. So please enter your questions into that Q&A box. And throughout this presentation, you guys as attendees are muted. And for sustainability purposes, we are recording today's workshop.
So I'm going to kick us off today by talking a little bit about some of our upcoming virtual career fairs. So the first ones on the list are Jumpstart and Encompass, and you'll see that they are the same days, but at different times. To tell you a little bit more about those events, Jumpstart is a career event and networking event for our first and second year undergraduate students. So this is a great opportunity to connect with some employers by attending that event as a first or second year student. Encompass is a fair that's open to all. It is supposed to be a mix of lots of different kinds of employers representing various job types and industries. We also have an event that's a little bit different. It's part of a consortium that Carnegie Mellon belongs to. So some of the other schools in that particular consortium include Notre Dame, Johns Hopkins, and Cornell, just to name a few. The purpose of the career and internship connection then is to highlight non-technical opportunities. It is open to juniors and seniors and students from the class of 2020 that might be interested. Unfortunately, it's at one of the same dates and times as our Encompass fair, but we do anticipate that people will still be able to join because of the way that we'll get into this throughout the presentation, but the way that you do sign up to attend the associated events with a career fair, that you might have time to do that as well. Other opportunities coming up, we have our intelligence career fair and our creative arts career fair. And on this slide, I just highlighted the ones in January and February. There are other ones coming up, so you'll be able to see those in Handshake and also on our website. I want to start off here by just talking a little bit about how you can find the fairs on Handshake. It is relatively easy to do, but to give you a little bit of an explanation on how to get started, whenever you log into Handshake, you can access the events tab from two different places. So one is on the home page to Handshake. When you first log in, you'll see events as a box. This is actually on your profile page in Handshake. Just click on the events tab. From there, you'll look for career fair. Now you can also select virtual in terms of just seeing virtual career fairs. But to be honest, all of our career fairs are virtual right now. So it doesn't necessarily help to click career fair in virtual. So when you click on career fair, you will see a list of the ones that in terms of your profile, you match the qualifications for that fair, right? So if I'm a junior, I might not see Jumpstart on here. Or looking at other fairs where I might not meet the criteria for attendance, I might not see them on the list. So if that's one of the issues you're having, that could be the potential answer to that. But you'll see Encompass here. So one of the challenges I had in creating this slide is that our career fair registration technically does not open until tomorrow. So if you're in Handshake right now, looking to figure out how to register for this, what we're missing on this slide next to the little bookmark icon is the registration button. But I promise you that will be there tomorrow. And I'm going to get into that a little bit on the next slide. So you'll see the list of events. And then I'm going to talk through how you can then sign up for them in the next slide. Go ahead, Amanda. So how to register. This is just the technical, how do I get the actual registration done piece of our seminar. So you will look for the register button when it becomes available. So that is step one. And what I don't want you to think is that that's all you have to do. So what's very unique about these fairs is that you have to first register and then sign up for the associated sessions. So you're going to see a list of both one-on-one sessions and group sessions. And I'll talk a little bit more about those in the next slide. But they'll be on the left-hand side of the page once you hit the register button. You're going to look and see the list of the sessions. You're going to select what you want and click RSVP. Or I'm sorry, click confirm to send in your RSVP. Okay, a few things that are very important about these virtual career fairs on Handshake. As I mentioned, the registration for Jumpstart and Encompass does start tomorrow. I didn't say the time, it is at noon tomorrow. You have to sign up in advance of the sessions to participate. If you remember nothing else from this workshop, that you must sign up in advance to participate for these sessions. And my understanding in Handshake is that you can sign up until a minute before the session starts. But you have to sign up in advance. So if you are, trying to get into something and it's already started, one of the group sessions, you'll not be allowed in. And that's just a technicality of the Handshake system. So we're trying to be very upfront about that. But also I want to get you thinking about the fact that you need to plan out the schedule in advance. So you can sign up for these different things and they're good and bad aspects of them, right? So in terms of the group sessions, it's a little bit more, if some of you have gone to a company information session, it kind of feels like that. They're talking about the company. You'll be able to either participate in a video or a text. I'll let Amanda explain that a little bit more as we go on. But you'll be able to interact some with the employers. But that to me is more about receiving information. The one-on-ones are your dedicated times within a recruiter. So one recruiter and you are participating in a 10-minute conversation. So the groups are 30 minutes, the one-on-ones are 10 minutes. And it's very important to sign up for those in advance and plan that into your schedule. In order to do so, even sometimes in order to participate in the fairs, you might have to make sure that your profile is up to date in Handshake. I think it comes into play a little bit more as you sign up for the one-on-one sessions or the group sessions, because they might be asking certain things. They might want to know your class year or something associated with your profile that's important to know. So make sure your profile is up to date. Make sure your settings are set to, their recommendation is community. So that means you're sharing your profile or resume information with employers. And once you sign up for that one-on-one, they will be able to see your resume. So one of the things I always like to remind students of is to make sure that your resume is the most current. So a lot of times as career consultants, when we have an appointment with someone, I can go in and sort of peek at their resume before our session. And I notice a lot of times that they have multiple resumes posted in the Handshake system, but they haven't gone in to update the resume to say this is the one that they want to be public. I see that a lot, especially with older students. They might have their most current resume in there, but the one that's public on their profile is from 2 years ago. So just a quick reminder that that is something that you can update. I'll turn it over to Amanda to talk a little bit about the expectations in terms of the virtual career fairs.
Yeah, so obviously we want to provide some context and some understanding of what you can expect going into when you are attending the virtual fairs. So Obviously, a virtual fair experience is going to be much different than what you were going through when you were in person. So, going into the gym and being there for our fairs looked much different and will be a much different experience than, what we're providing and what is going to be provided to you in this virtual fair. So there are no lines or queues to wait in, and that is as a result of having to schedule sessions. So you have to schedule either group or one-on-one sessions in order to participate or in order to get, face time in front of recruiters or, interact with companies and employers. So a positive, you don't have to wait in long lines anymore. And the scheduling the sessions does provide you an allotted time with those employers or recruiters, particularly those one-on-one sessions, obviously. And the goal overall for a virtual fair is to really provide a medium where you can make meaningful connections with employers and employer representatives, recruiters. It is a place to kickstart recruiting processes going forward. So with that being said, when you're going into these conversations and these interactions with employers, like I said, it's based on making meaningful connections. So what does that mean? And what does that look like in practice in real time? So you're going to be interacting with employers. This could be recruiters, like people in HR. It could be professionals. So maybe an engineer is attending to talk to other students that are interested in those technical opportunities. You could also potentially be speaking with alumni. We see it often that CMU alumni come back to represent their companies at our virtual fairs and our other events as well. And these conversations are going to be brief. Like we talked about, the group sessions are 30 minutes in length and the one-on-one sessions are 10 minutes in length. So it's best to make sure that you make the most of this time that you have allotted with every employer. So group sessions are for those students who are really wanting to learn more about a company, get more information, kind of an exploratory method. While individual sessions, those one-on-one sessions, students are expected to come prepared and really drive that conversation. So you need to be doing your research, which we're all going to talk about in a little bit on the next few slides going forward. But overall, these conversations are going to include introductions between you and the employer, as well as conversations regarding your job or internship search. So be prepared to discuss any relevant experiences or skills, what you're seeking currently, what specifically connects you to that company, always aligning yourself with them. And these employer interactions, like I've mentioned, they're ultimately meant to kickstart the recruiting processes and create connections that you can then follow up on after the event. So while you're interacting with that employer, be sure to listen or ask, read, follow up with the company representative that you're interacting with. So this might include, making a follow-up outreach via LinkedIn or by email. It could be an interview invitation, but we do want to stress that potential interview invitation probably will not come during the week of the 25th. That might come in the weeks following, as with the continual impact of COVID on recruiting processes, employers are still grappling with a very fluid situation. It could include direction to complete an application or some sort of online assessment or skills test. And we can cover what you'll do following a virtual fair in depth later on in our slides. So stay tuned for more on that. And as always, we want to make sure that our students are representing Carnegie Mellon and themselves appropriately. So we have set aside some expectations and ground rules for, when you schedule those one-on-one sessions with employers. You are expected to attend all scheduled one-on-one sessions with employers during virtual fairs. If you've scheduled a one-on-one session that you are no longer able to attend, it is imperative that you try to cancel that session within Handshake ahead of time, if possible. We've also outlined on that link down there these policies as well, so you can see it written out a little bit further and provides more detail on who you can contact if you are unable to cancel the session within Handshake. If an employer reports that you have missed a scheduled one-on-one session, the CPDC has outlined consequences for the first offense as well as multiple offenses, as the virtual fair platform allows for you to interact, variety of times over maybe one particular session, or over a semester as well. So please follow those links within our slides, which will be provided to you afterwards as well. But yes, we definitely want to cover some expectations to make sure you guys understand that you are to be attending all scheduled one-on-one sessions with employers during our virtual fairs.
Okay, that's my turn, what to do before the event. But I think we do have a question I just want to mention. Someone asked what time the registration will open tomorrow. It is at noon Eastern time. So January 14th Eastern time, you'll be able to register for the fair and start to see available one-on-one sessions and group sessions. In terms of where can you find the time slots? When you go into Handshake and you register, you will be able, it's going to be really easy to see. You'll see available sessions. It's when you register, it automatically actually takes you to a screen that will encourage you to see all of the employers, and under each employer name, you'll be able to see group session or one-on-one session. You'll see the times available. It's really pretty user-friendly for you to sign up for those. All right, so I'm going to continue a little bit about what to do before the event. We already mentioned that you want to sign up for those time slots. I think we've kind of really emphasized that you need to do that before the day. Also remember that Encompass is 2 days, so you do need to register for each day and sign up for time slots for each day's group sessions and one-on-one sessions. Someone had mentioned, what do we talk about during the one-on-one sessions or the group sessions? And so we'll get into that. But before the event, you want to write and practice what we're calling your professional introduction. Some people call that your elevator pitch. No more than 30 seconds. You can always Google elevator pitch and professional introduction, but on the Career Center's website, under Browse Resources and Quick Tips, this is the link that we have in our slides for professional introduction. It's basically things that you want to emphasize to the employer, that you want them to know about you. Maybe your major, your year in school, if you're looking for an internship or full-time position, and a few things about you that you think they're going to care about. Some projects, some courses you've taken, some skills, any activities or leadership that you're involved in. And you need to practice it because you want to do all of this in less than 30 seconds. I don't recommend memorizing your professional introduction, but you do want to be comfortable with the information so that it comes pretty easily to you when it's time to introduce yourself to the employer. And then again, we're still in the what to do beforehand, not during, but beforehand, you want to research the companies that you sign up for slots. So if you're signing up for a one-on-one time slot with some companies and group sessions, research the company a little bit, know their products, their purpose, who are their clients, what kind of students do they like to hire? Because you do want to know when you go in to talk to them who they are. You never want to ask the question, so remind me what you do or what you make or who your clients are. You want to already know that information. Some of the places that you can find this information, of course, their company websites. Sometimes on a company website, it can be in the About Us. It can be in press releases or news information. You do want to know if they've been in the news lately, they've just released something or signed on new clients, if they've bought out someone or been bought out. You can look on Hoover's. Hoover's is a database in the CMU library system. And you have access to that, and you can look up employer names and learn a little bit about them. And then also you can look on a website called Glassdoor, and there's some information on companies there. The other thing you want to do to get ready is you want to have a list of questions to ask. You want to potentially think about, what do you need to know about this company? Is it about the roles that they're hiring for? Is it about, are they hiring internships or full-time? What is their hiring timeline? Are they hoping to make offers or in May? Are they starting to interview next week, next month? But those are all the types of questions you can ask about. Also, you could ask about skills that they're looking for or the types of students that would be a good fit. for their company and for the roles in the company. All right, next slide. What to do? We're going to talk more. So the next thing you want to do is you want to prepare your video and audio. Make sure that it's working within that particular browser. You can join the sessions 5 minutes early, and I recommend at least for that day, the first time you're about to join the session, whether it's group or one-on-one, test it out. Sometimes there are glitches, different firewalls, and so on. And then one other thing we just want to prepare you is that sometimes employers will use an external link rather than using the handshake video link or link for you to come into the group session or to the one-on-one session. It will be very apparent that they're going to post the external link, but I wanted to let you know that that can happen, and just not to be surprised about that. We're also posting an article in Handshake that allows you to troubleshoot if you're having some problems. They are encouraging you to use Firefox or Chrome, Google Chrome browsers. Those tend to work better with the Handshake virtual career fair. And then I'm just going to say it, even though we've been saying it for the whole semester that we're all virtual, just be aware of what's around you. Make sure your lighting is in front of you and not behind you. You don't want to be in a witness protection program. You want to notice what's behind you, whether you're going to use a virtual background or if it's your own background. Make sure doors are closed and that there isn't a complete mess behind you. And then in terms of attire, everyone has some different thoughts on this. I am of the belief if you could just take it one notch up from your regular at-home student attire, it will put you in the mood to start talking about your career and your professional world. And if you could put on a collared shirt or just something a little bit nicer, that will speak well for you as you're talking to an employer. All right, and then here are some more articles that you can read about in Handshake. And as Amanda mentioned, we are going to be, after this event, we will attach the Google Slides to the event, this event. So if you go back into Handshake, you will see an attachment to this session, this workshop in Handshake, and you'll be able to have access to the slides. Next slide. All right, so here we are. We're getting into what to do during the events. Let's start with the one-on-one sessions. By default, these are going to be video sessions, so be ready for that. Be ready for the camera to be on. Don't be surprised by that. And again, get your lighting ready and so on and so forth. When you go into the session, you want to introduce yourself. That's where you're going to take your less than 30 seconds elevator pitch, and you're going to say, hi, my name's Lisa Dichter. I'm a sophomore mechanical engineering student. I'm really excited to be talking to you. I've done several projects so far in my courses. I've been involved in these activities. I have these strengths. I'm looking for these types of roles. If you can, in your elevator pitch, include, if we do get disconnected, here is my email or here is my cell, because sometimes there can be a little bit of technology glitches. Then you can always get in touch with the recruiter after that. Try to be conversational, I would say. At the end of your elevator pitch, if you can invite them to join into the conversation, that's great. So you could maybe end your elevator pitch with, and I'd love to hear more about your internships or internships at your company. That kind of invites them in. They're going to start to talk. And as they start to talk, feel free to take notes. Note down their name and any contact information. And then also listen, because they're going to be talking, you're going to be taking notes, but then they're going to eventually ask you another question, right? So you need to be able to respond and not be totally distracted. They're going to ask you questions potentially about your projects, things that you mentioned in your elevator pitch. So it's always nice to mention in your elevator pitch things that you hope they're going to ask you about later on. So they may ask you about activities, projects, classes, skills, strengths, and so on. So be ready to answer those questions. I will say 10 minutes are going to go fast. So don't think that you have all the time in the world. When they ask you a question, you don't want to speak for 6 minutes on a project that they asked you about. So maybe ahead of time, try to prep how you are going to briefly explain something they could ask you about on your resume. So be ready to answer their questions, and then end the session with potentially you could see 10 minutes is approaching, and you could ask them what is the next step in their hiring process, or what are next steps that they would recommend you take to get further along in their hiring process. All right, group sessions. So if there are greater than 15 students in the session, then the participant video and audio will be disabled, and it's going to resemble a more of an employer information session. It's going to be less interactive. So that means you need to, again, take notes, write down some things that they're going to say, because it could help you later on if you do end up connecting with an employer, a recruiter. If you do end up down the road getting an interview with a company, then having information from this group session is going to help you potentially show your interest in the company. They may be able to just stay kind of aware that the employer can enable a raise hand feature, and if they call on you, then you can use your audio or your video. If there are less than 15 students in the session, then it could be more interactive. You may be able to, they may enable your video, you could type into the chat some questions, and they may ask you some specific questions to you. So be ready for that. I will say that we are trying to encourage employers to have specific type of group sessions. So if possible, they could have a group session on marketing analyst or data science roles, that they may, if they take our advice, they may have different kinds of group sessions that are very focused. So be aware of which sessions you're signing up for, and also maybe have questions ready that go along with those types of group sessions.
Lisa, I'm glad you made that point. We're getting a lot of questions about how can I tell what positions the employers are hiring for, or where can I see the employer list? Lots of interest about looking at the employers participating and trying to figure out what they're hiring for and how to engage.
Okay. Do you want, are there questions, or do you want to take the, answer some of the questions that we've been getting, or have you guys been typing them as we go?
We've typed some of them, but I think, for example, this is a little related to what you were covering with one-on-one sessions and group sessions. We had a question: if a company requests seniors or juniors, but you are younger and still interested in applying to them in the future, is it still worth undertaking a one-on-one conversation? So employers have the ability to set parameters or pick specific skill sets that they're seeking. So that could be class year, like you mentioned in this question. That could be, that you have experience in C++ or whatever else is on your handshake profile. And so in some senses, employers are able to designate what types of students, whether it be class year or other items, that they would like to speak with in those one-on-one sessions. So if you're a sophomore and you see, that they only want to talk to juniors or seniors, you probably will not be able to schedule one-on-one sessions with them, because some employers do have the ability to indicate the types of students they would like to speak with, regarding class year and particular skill sets. Hopefully that covers. Did I miss anything?
No, I was just going to add on to that. We do often hear then from employers that maybe they aren't getting a lot of signups because they've put too many of those parameters on their schedule. So we do encourage employers, when they're talking to us about that, to try to relax some of those. So one thing to think about might be, you see an employer closer to the event that has a lot of open slots. maybe then they've opened those parameters and they are more willing to talk to different kinds of students. So I would keep an eye on that and just see how many openings they have. If it gets a little closer to the event, you might see that they have more things coming up.
I agree. I mean, once if you go in tomorrow and you start signing up for sessions and think you're done, I would keep checking back, like Jen said, because they could open up parameters, or maybe some students will cancel out of sessions and you'll be able to get into sessions. So keep checking to look for updates.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Someone asked, where will this recording be uploaded? So we are going to save this in the career launch modules. Everyone, all undergrads have access to the career launch course in Canvas, and it will be in module 9. And so we will we'll upload that. It might not be tomorrow, maybe Friday.
I was going to say I'm uploading, so I'll probably have it done by the end of the week. We've also still been pushing things to our YouTube page.
Yes, absolutely. Advice on how to research a company. Definitely look at their website. You can look for, who are their clients, who are their customers, what are their products, have they opened up a new manufacturing plant, have they been in the news lately? So look on their website, look on Glassdoor. In the CMU library system, there's a really great database called Hoover's, and that has listings of companies and lots of details on each of the companies.
I would add to that, I don't think any company is expecting you to be an expert in what they do. I think the level that you're looking for is, like Lisa was mentioning, a basic understanding of what they do, who their clients are. Is there anything big happening with them in the news? I think that's a nice base level understanding of what's going on with that company.
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is, if it can be easily answered by Google, you probably shouldn't ask that question.
So we have several questions regarding if you're a first-year student, and you're right. If you're a first-year student and you've basically had one semester at CMU, then you're probably not going to have projects. You've had some classes that you can talk about, but you can only talk about things that you've experienced. So I wouldn't worry about it. They know that first-year students have only had one semester, so certainly talk about what you did accomplish during your first semester, but it is definitely okay to bring in things from high school, from things that you did last summer, or maybe organizations that you were in high school, or courses that you took, or any kind of jobs, even if they were jobs not related to your field. Employers do like to hear that you volunteered or had different kinds of experiences. So it's really just, it's emphasizing just what you do know and what you have accomplished so far, and that you're really interested in their company.
I think that's a great point, Lisa. I would say to that too, that thinking about being a first-year student and how an employer might approach that, at this point in your career, they're not necessarily hiring you because you have a wealth of experience in an area. I think what you're really trying to show them is that you have potential. So much like Lisa said, you're thinking about maybe some things you did in high school that show leadership or teamwork, or you were in a competition of some sort that's dedicated to the area you're pursuing, or even talking about the classes that you're going to be taking this spring, or some of the projects you could potentially be working on. I think baseline, it's just showing you have an interest in the company or the industry. And these are the ways that you're trying to get some more experience and build that knowledge base.
And I'll just add to that, that we've been talking about projects. It is in 30 seconds. It is hard if you do include projects in your elevator pitch. And, you know, I use the word project, so I'll apologize a little bit. I work with mechanical engineering students, and engineering students tend to have more projects in their courses than maybe some other majors, so I apologize. But I'm also guessing in your courses, no matter what major you are, you're writing papers, you're working in groups on some kind of task, you're learning new skills and new theories, and that's what you want to showcase. In terms of how much detail, you're right, you can't go into tons of detail about those things in those 30 seconds. But if you throw them out, like I worked on this research paper, or I did this lab, or I learned these types of skills in this class, you're just kind of throwing it out there so that they know that you have experienced it. If they want to know a little bit more, then they'll ask you about it.
I think this would be a good time. We just have this one slide left, so I'm going to go ahead and speak through this, and then I think we can move on to questions. We're getting a lot of questions, which is great. Thank you all so much for participating. So what happens after the career fair? This is a somewhat of a tough thing to describe. And the reason I say that is because a lot of it depends on the types of conversations that you're having with recruiters. Even if you're in the group conversation, they might be saying to you, these are some things that we're going to be doing moving forward. We're going to have this info session next week where we talk about X, Y, and Z. Or, you know, as a first year student, you might be interested in joining our webinar series, and these are the topics that are coming up. So a lot of it is based on the conversations that you might be having in these meetings. If you have a one-on-one, they've asked you to do something in the one-on-one, like please go to our website and apply for this particular job so that we have all of your materials. So what I would probably do if you have the time after each one-on-one or group session, just make a few notes in terms of what you need to do to stay organized. So do you have to do something as a follow-up? Is there a deadline that they told you about? You're taking the time out, and I even recommend this when we're having these career events in person. If you need to duck out of the room for a few minutes and clear your head a little bit, take a few notes before you go into the next meeting. I think that's perfectly fine. So you can do the virtual version of that with no problem. Go online, apply to anything they're telling you to that sounds interesting to you. Make sure you keep careful note of who you're speaking to. We were talking about this a little bit when we were preparing our slides, and we always get students that come to us and say, can you remind me again who I spoke to at this event or during this interview? And we don't always keep good track of that, nor do we think that's really our place to do that. So I would recommend that you just keep good notes in terms of who you're talking to. If you want to then do a follow-up on LinkedIn, I think that would be a great place to do that. So you have your one-on-one with XYZ alum for this company. When you're finished, you can go to LinkedIn, request to be connected with that person, write a short little thank you so much for the conversation today. I learned a lot. I look forward to keeping in touch kind of email to go along with that through LinkedIn. If you're able to get their actual contact information, if they're sharing their email address, I would go ahead and write them a thank you note. I would do a very brief just overview of what you talked about. I really enjoyed our conversation on XYZ. As a reminder, I'm a first year student doing the following. So I think those are always nice to include. We wanted to put a couple of things in here that could potentially happen. You know, we don't want you to walk away with the expectation that you are going to get an interview, because a lot of this really is about making connections and starting that process. So Lisa was talking a lot about projects and how her students have projects. I think in Tepper, what I see a lot in terms of recruiting is going to something like this is step one in the process. So you're meeting some people, you're getting your name out there a little bit, you're making some contacts in industry, and that's the very beginning of the process. So who knows what will happen after here? We might apply to things online, we'll wait to see what happens with those. We might sign up for additional things the employer is doing. We might eventually get asked to do an interview. So we wanted to put Big Interview in here as a resource. So Big Interview is something that allows you to use the webcam on your computer to practice interviewing skills. So it will record you, you'll get questions. This is the asynchronous type of interviewing, if you've heard of that before. So what that simply means is that I'll go online, an employer has invited me to a virtual first round interview. I'll go online to a system like HireVue and answer maybe 3 interview questions. I'm not actually interacting with anyone though. There are different versions of virtual interviewing. I don't want to get too far into this because it isn't our topic today and we're doing something related to this later. But in those particular situations, it's kind of challenging, right? So we're being recorded today. It's similar to that, but I'm not going to be talking to anyone. I'm going to be prompted with these 2 or 3 questions, and that can be a little bit scary. So Big Interview helps you to practice that with question prompts that are designed by function or industry or just general questions. You can find it if you go into Handshake, click on the Career Center button. It is where you'll go to schedule appointments if some of you are interested in doing appointments, which is our next step. But you'll find it there under resources. So you click on Career Center and you'll see another name that comes up for resources, and it is linked there. And then we added the piece about talking to your career consultant. You can talk to us anytime. You don't necessarily have to have questions, but we wanted to just put it in there as a prompt because it is over break. And I think maybe some people are thinking that we aren't necessarily around. Well, here we are. We're working. We came back at the beginning of January. You can meet with us virtually. If you wanted to schedule appointments for certain topics, you can do that. If you have quick questions and want to chat with us for a little bit, that's more than welcome. But we wanted to just put ourselves out there as a resource. Anything I missed, team, from this slide?
No,
I don't think
I
so.
think you covered it all. We do have a question on what is a good way to invite a connection with employers on LinkedIn without sounding too direct. I mean, I think it's okay to sound direct. I hope you're not saying without sounding rude. You won't sound, just because you're sounding direct, they won't take that in a negative way. It's hard to be subtle when you're inviting someone to connect on LinkedIn. It's a recruiter. They know why you want to connect with them. You're interested in the company. You're interested in potentially being hired. You certainly don't want to invite them to connect and say, can you hire me? Right? I mean, you don't want to do that.
That's very direct.
But you do want to say, I saw you were in the Handshake virtual fair yesterday, and please accept my invitation to connect with me on LinkedIn so that I can hear a little bit more about the company and the roles you're hiring for.
A good rule of thumb I always suggest is, I know you only have 300 characters when you're sending that message along with your connection request on LinkedIn, but identifying who you are, what you're doing, and why you're reaching out. So, I'm a junior chemical engineering student here at Carnegie Mellon. I met you, or I, saw your company was attending yesterday. Would love to connect to talk more about opportunities or something like that in that succinct 300 character method.
I also would take a slightly different approach if you are talking to one of our alumni. I think in that particular instance, you can tailor your message a little bit better to just wanting to get to know them more, asking a few questions. Maybe you do a one-on-one with them and that 10 minutes go really quickly. And you want to continue to stay in touch and just sort of ask if it would be possible to ask a few more questions related to their company or industry. I think that's perfectly fine. It's just a different approach to me versus talking to an alum versus a recruiter. So like Lisa was saying, I think you can be a lot more direct with a recruiter.
And LinkedIn accounts are free. So if you don't have one, which is what someone asked, create one today or before the job fairs. They're real easy to create, and you can just create a very simple profile and say that, add in your education, that you go to Carnegie Mellon and what you're getting a degree in, when you're graduating. Upload a picture. It does not have to be a professional looking picture, just a picture just of you up against a wall, just nothing in the background, and just upload it. So
we have a really great resource in the back of our My Career Path guide. It's like the last page of that PDF that goes section by section on how to create a LinkedIn profile. So if you go to our website, cmu.edu/career, you click on students and alumni on the top half of that web page. Then a black bar will show up on the right. You're going to click on, I think it's Explore Your Career. And on this page, there are there's like a red box, rectangle, and a gray box. There should be a link within that gray box directly to that PDF. And if you can't find it, if someone could provide the link in the chat, Jen or
I threw a
Lisa.
different link in the chat because I could just find it quickly.
Okay,
But this is
that
something
works.
LinkedIn wrote for students on how to get started with your profile if you don't have one.
Yeah, that's also a great resource as well.
Someone also asked about how limited are the number of available one-on-one sessions, and roughly how many group or one-on-one sessions do you think would be reasonable to sign up for? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, the goal is, you know, really relevant to you as a student and what your intentions are and what you're seeking. So, for example, if you're just there to really explore or learn more about certain companies, group sessions might be good for you. But if you know that there's maybe 3 companies in particular that you are super interested in, you've looked at the opportunities they have available, you think you line up with some of those opportunities, that's when you would sign up for those one-on-one sessions. The idea isn't for students to hog all the one-on-one sessions. So please be mindful of others, and that, it is appropriate especially with that one company, signing up for one-on-one session. But yeah, any other thoughts, Jen or Lisa?
Just add that some of it is controlled by the company. So you might find some companies just have more people that can staff the fair. I think a lot of it depends on what other fairs they're doing that day or that week, or how they divide up their staff to conquer those. But I have found in the past, we did this in the fall with some of the other career fairs. We used Handshake, and it was my experience that companies would send 2 to 3 reps to something like this, and you could sign up for, an hour or 2 worth of slots with those reps. So it seemed to be like there were a lot more slots than we had students at one point. Now, this is a bit of a bigger fair than we've run, so I would still anticipate it being busy, but in my experience, there were plenty of slots available. If a company is sending 3 different recruiters, though, like Amanda said, I wouldn't sign up for 3 different slots with the same company.
The dress code is business casual. I don't think you need to put a suit and tie on, but like I think I mentioned in the beginning, if you could take it up a notch from your normal student at home mode and put on a nicer shirt, then that would make you look like you're in your professional mode.
You can practice what we have heard called the fashion mullet. So a little more business on the top. Maybe sweatpants on the bottom that no one can see.
No one can see. How do we answer the following in a genuine way? Why do you want to work for our company? Amanda, do you want to?
The goal, obviously, your answer should be genuine. I know that there are some students that are like, well, I just learned about this company, I really don't have a stance. I get that happens, but essentially, with recruiting processes and there being so many other candidates, especially in a tighter job market, the goal is to convince that company that they are your number one, that you are most interested in them. That doesn't mean you need to come off as like disingenuous and be overly like, there's a balance. Find that balance. If you can take the time in your research to maybe pinpoint one item that connects you personally to that company, whether it's in their mission statement, their values, like maybe a recent project they worked on, that's where doing that company research will help you. And in that answer, you'll probably be a little bit more genuine, and kind of have that energy around it. Did I hit on that? Jen, Lisa, you have any other thoughts?
I think they're just things about a company that you can relate to, right? It could be something that you read in their mission statement. It could be the product that they make. It could be that they're part of the community that you grew up in. So I think there's always something that you can find to make a case of why something is interesting. Just do a little bit of digging and try to make, again, it's sort of thinking about positioning your experience. You don't have to come in with this massive amount of experience. You don't have to sell yourself to this company that they're your ride or die, right? I think you just want to show that there's something in common between the two of you that's interesting. right? You might have a commitment to sustainability, and the company has something on their website that really talks about initiatives they do around that. I think it's just trying to find that one little nugget that seems interesting to you.
So we have a couple other questions about, should you have already applied to a company's interview before attending a one-on-one meeting, or do people generally apply afterwards?
I mean, you may not be able to, so that could be a bit of a logistical point. But I don't really have a strong preference either way. I mean, there might be something that's required in terms of like typically you would drop your resume first and then be invited to an interview. I mean, so there's some logistical details that go along with that, right? So if it's an open interview schedule and handshake, then you'd have to sign up within a specific window. So I would hate to say, I don't want you to miss that window in waiting for this event. Does that make sense?
So if you can apply ahead of time, then sure, go ahead and do it. You don't have to stop yourself, but don't stress out if you don't see, if there's nothing to apply to. And then during the session, they tell you then to go on and apply.
Right. And usually you're dropping your resume and cover letter well before you get invited to the interview. So one of the things, if they want you to write a cover letter, one of the things to think about is that the conversation you're having in your one-on-one could give you some interesting things that you could write about in the cover letter, if it is needed.
We also have a question, what's the ideal result of a one-on-one meeting with a recruiter? If you get connected on LinkedIn, how does that affect your application process when you still have to go through a similar process as everyone else?
I mean, overall, we don't want you to get discouraged when they tell you, well, go apply online, go apply online. Like that is unfortunately just a hurdle that everyone has to kind of, take care of or check that box, given that, in order for a company to start the recruiting process with you, they have to have your information in their talent system or their applicant tracking system. So they need to have that completed application. So sometimes you've already gotten that one-on-one session under your belt with that recruiter and you're feeling good, you've made a connection, and they might say to you, well, we do still need you to go online and apply. That's really a formality in that sense, because again, everyone applies online, because in order to start any recruiting process, which means inviting you in for an interview, taking you to the next round for another interview after that, you have to have that application completed online. So I think the ultimate goal is building that connection, having someone that you can follow up with, once you do complete that application, to let them know, hey, I followed your directions, like I'm ready to follow up because I've completed my application for this role. We talked at, this virtual fair, on this date, kind of, rethinking or, re-drudging up some of the stuff you connected with them about.
I would agree with that. I would just say that the ultimate goal in terms of that is just to make a connection, right? I would leave it at that. And then you try to grow and build that connection over time if you can. So if it's maybe just reaching back to that contact in a few months and providing them with any updates or asking a few questions, I think there are always ways to nurture those relationships. I'm just a little bit more to the point about, okay, let's make a contact that shows I'm interested. Anything that you do to show you're interested is a positive, because it does help you to stand out. Oh, there was a question I just saw about what information about the company will be available on the sign up that will help us to decide to sign up for it, such as industry and internship roles they have. The quick answer to that question is yes, you'll be able to see more information, but I wanted to make the point too that you may not be able to see everything tomorrow. And that's an important point to make. Just because the fair goes live doesn't mean that everyone will have all of their one-on-ones and group sessions in there. So Lisa made a good point about coming back in and checking it out and adding more things to your schedule. I just try to get into the habit of doing that. Employers are getting used to this software too, much like all of us are. And so If they haven't uploaded the one-on-ones or the group sessions, we will start emailing them saying, hey, go ahead and do this so that students can sign up. Sometimes a few of them, especially in the fall, as it was brand new, were a little late in adding some of those sessions. So we'll continue to ask them to do those things. So if you don't see anything in there with an employer that you're interested in, keep checking back.
Some of the
I'm gonna-
questions are pretty specific, so I will encourage you guys to reach out to your career consultants. You know, schedule an appointment if you're able to, a virtual appointment, meet with us. That's what we're here to open discussions up. If you have questions that you want answered or you need help with things, that is what we're here for. So we definitely encourage you to take those questions and meet with your career consultant if they're really specific to your, you know, scenario and experience.
I think we've answered most of them. I typed in our quick tips for getting a sample elevator pitch, because one of the questions was, what do we talk about? How do we choose what we talk about? You know, just remember the 10 minutes go quickly. So you're not going to be able to talk about everything. You do want to try to choose the things that you think that employer for that role or that employer in that industry might be more interested in. So you might choose certain projects or certain papers or research or labs or skills for these employers in this industry and a whole different set for this other industry.
We have had 2 questions about how do we know who our career consultant is, especially for first-year students. You obviously might not know this information just yet. So you can access on Handshake when you go into the Handshake homepage. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll click on Career Center. And on that page, you'll see the appointments box. You'll click on that. And there's a big blue button that says schedule a new appointment. This will prompt you through how to schedule an appointment, whether it be with your career consultant or one of our career peer mentors to meet. You can also find information about your career consultant on our website. So cmu.edu/career. You'll be able to, I think it should be under one of the top tabs, correct? What is the name of it?
I'm going to put the link in.
Okay, thanks, Jen. That helps a lot.
Thanks, Jen. I usually suggest only using one email address on your resume. I mean, you can use a Gmail address. I think they like to see your school address, your Andrew or at CMU email address. That was one of the questions. So I would just choose one and put one. One of the questions was around, is this event mainly for people in the STEM fields? They're having trouble finding employers that look like they have job opportunities for writing, communication, etc.
Oh, I would say to that, one of the fairs I mentioned is that career and internship connections event. There are definitely employers there from, I saw a few from advertising and PR. There was a publishing one. So check out that fair too, because that one might also be interesting.
But the other thing I would say is that sometimes you can do, if the employers allow you, you could have one-on-one sessions with the employers if it's a company that might be in the STEM field, but you still would like to do some kind of writing as a job function or as a role for that company. And if that interests you, then go ahead and sign up for a one-on-one session and have a conversation. If they're not the right person for you to talk to regarding those types of roles, ask them if they have suggestions for other people at the company that would be a good fit for those types of roles. And then talk to your career consultant, because ultimately if you're Dietrich in writing and communication, Joe and Kristen are great with helping you to find employers and to connect with employers and to look for your experiences. I'll just remind everyone that we're going to be uploading a recording of this session into Career Launch on Canvas in Module 9. It'll also be in the CPDC YouTube channel. And then the Google Slides, these slides will be as an attachment in Handshake on this particular workshop. So when you go back into Handshake, give us till tomorrow-ish, but we will post the slides on there. Okay. I think we're done. Anyone else have anything? Well, thank you all. We really appreciate it. Good luck with your searching, and you know, stay optimistic. It's going to be a great semester, and employers are you know, wanting to connect with you. And so let us know how else we can help.